where I'm speaking from. I'm in the Wimmera in Western Victoria, meeting with groups to discuss the project that I'm working on with them and possibly sharing their stories about their deep connection to this country here. My work is cultural mapping, and I enjoy doing it. And my PhD with QUT is by creative practice. So ultimately, I'm bringing to the table all the stuff I've done before and trying to give it some real rigor beyond what it's been in the past in this way. So very big thank you to my supervisors that I'm working with, Dr. Greg Hearn and Dr. Gavin Sade, as well as Dr. Donna Hancox. If their guidance and advice and help has been invaluable as I navigate all the different trials and tribulations in doing the work that we do in this space. I just want to probably take the time to begin by probably sharing my screen. I think that's probably where I should start. There's lots to show, and I think I'll do it via this screen. I think the entire screen is probably what I should be showing. Does that come up pretty well?
Yes, thanks, Brett. Well done.
Is that there?
Yep,
Can you
you're
see
good
that?
to go. Yep.
Okay, great. I'll just minimize that a bit to get that out of the way. I think I've done that. I might close that down. This is basically how I want to present this. So I'm going to start by just, if you go to this website, this is my presentation. This is also my research. There's also the project. So in a sense, it's encapsulated in one. So if you wanted to know more about what I do, this sort of explains it. And in effect, as has been described in the intro, it's trying to map the rich tapestry of our First Nations people in three-dimensional space. And I think that the temporal spatial mapping sense says a lot about the everywhere of our culture and the cyclic nature of it. So whenever you recognise our connection, it's generally a welcome or acknowledgement of country. And I'm trying to bring that into the digital age. So you'll see that said in these words, but that's me just telling you in the way that I operate on a daily basis with this work. Effectively, I've been showcasing this for quite a while. I've been in this space working in the digital realm for 3 decades. And I think that the time is right to sort of formalise the processes, methodologies, and ways that I do this. But applying what I call a 10D geospatial digital platform framework. And I'll say that in the next section as you scroll down the page. But in a sense, I just wanted to give this broad overview. Ultimately, when I talk about the work, I'm trying to build what I call a bit like a time machine. And it's only a time machine that can go back over the history of our connection to country from before European settlement came in and encroached and did what it did across the nation. And as such, I've been talking with many groups, presenting this over time. This day, I'm in Wimmera. Last week, I was in Ballarat. In a few days, I'll be in Melbourne. And then in a few days after that, I'll be in Sydney. A few days after that, I'll be in Rockhampton. And then you get the drift. And each group has got similar challenges about how they might do this, and then similar challenges as to how they might present their knowledge moving forward in the medium that I'm trying to work on. Looking at this work, I've come back down to the next section, and there's some design questions I like to showcase here. The importance of what the cultural heritage data for this work, it needs to be contextualised in my mind, and then managed and provided and vetted by local custodians. So when I travel around, I've used this case study here of the Wurundjeri people where I had a reconstruction of the Yarra River and then talked about all the history and stories that go with that Yarra River over the span of a 3 months experience, which means if you wanted to spend time in that, you'll take 3 months in that worldscape. And I'm doing the similar time frame with every one of my projects, and there's, I think, 142 on the table. So you can get an idea of what I'm saying here. There's 142 experiences where you might spend up to 3 months exploring the content within that, which is, I think, a fair amount of time. And there's more to be done. Going further, ultimately, what I've been advised from many people with the oral histories, the language data, and all the archaeological references that go into the work is that it's all about authenticity and, to a greater extent, truth-telling. What were the sites where people lived? Where did they work? Where did they play? Where did they perform? What was significant? What was sacred in that way? And so this is what I'm trying to show with each one of the projects across the board. Where you might find these things in museums, I'm trying to bring the digital reconstructions into the virtual in and about the time that they might have been constructed. If you look on the right here of this image, each one of those images is an image of a shield. These are actually 3D reconstructions of those shields. And I've got in the work something in the order of about 14,000 shields digitally reconstructed as one set of data. I've done similar efforts with spears, woomera, clubs, axes, and the like. So there's a lot there, and then trying to look at where they belong. And in the metadata within each one of those, you're looking at things like the wood hardness, the textures, the artwork, and that analysis across the board. That's what we're looking at there. Then furthermore, I'm looking at where those sites of significance might be. This is one map of the 142 that have been done, which is in a sense a GIS-based map of sites that relate to our land use and occupancy. And as anybody who's involved with data title would know, this sort of mapping is important to get a determination for our native title in those spaces, and extends on from where land rights was first discussed way back in time, you know. And I think that land use and occupancy then leads into, flora and fauna, and again, that's food, medicine, and tools. And it says this in my words here, and types of cultural practices that go on, including, cultural burning practices. Waterways are central to this too, and I'm here presently in the Wimmera, and important to them is this inland river, from where it originates to where it flows north into salt pans, whose name just escapes me. But, given the nature of this, we want to see this presented in this work. Going further, I then digitized custodians in 3D. Now, this is one projection that I did on the Opera House. It had a few views, I heard. I think 32 million, I heard. But in that regard, these people were 3D reconstructions of the people who first encountered the first fleet in Sydney, done in collaboration with many local people, including the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council. That's the idea. These people actually have been made as custodians to actually speak to you procedurally without scripts. So in a sense, I'll give them what I call a digital brain, and they will present knowledge as provided to their connection to country in the virtual. All up, I've done a whole suite of Aboriginal ancestors around the country in each one of the projects. There's maybe, what you can imagine, there's maybe a dozen per project or more, and they all advised too by First Nations people. So it's not as it goes. I think that's it. So this is a more in-depth thing. Now, the in-depth part here, I'm talking about 10D geospatial frameworks. Now, I've put it to First Nations truth-telling, but the ultimate part to this is that it is transport industries. They use this in terms of what they determine as to a cost for how those things might occur. So I'm trying to look at that and then applying it to a First Nations perspective. And I'll go through this a little bit quicker, but in a sense, 10D has a multi-dimensional approach. It talks about the physical. It goes into the deep time, in a sense, what I call everywhen. And this image on the side there is me dabbling with how to build a tesseract as a way to explore this through multiple dimensions of time, going somewhere very quickly. through that space. There's the ecology of it all, which is very important to our sense of the environment. Language and naming, place naming in a sense, that's what this comes into here, and where those fit. Kinship, social relations, what that could be, law, and how we might, I suppose, codify that law beyond the oral traditions of it. And then further on this is the spirituality and dreaming. In effect, this is, I could go into some depth on this, but I'll just say here that in this spirituality and dreaming, we're talking about type of adaptation of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but also the one, it just escapes me, I think it's the Blackfoot. I think it's the Blackfoot analysis that was done by Maslow at the time. And I was trying to look at how I might apply this in our context. But that's still out and the research is still being done. And lastly, I'm talking about the health, welfare and well-being that this type of approach sustains. And there it goes. And lastly, I talked about representation and revitalisation, connected to country. I think it improves health. I think this is the platform that I'm trying to do, which is about truth-telling and justice, which is important to note. And how does this fit towards sovereignty of technical infrastructure? And finally, virtual sovereignty is what I'm presenting here in this broad map. And I think that's the final part. Now, if anybody wanted to look at the map appears like this if I explored it. And in that, it's another version of Google Earth in a sense. I think I've run out of time, is that correct? And that's the work as it flows. So in effect, that's all I have to say. And I think, Pip, that's about time, is it?
You actually have a couple more minutes, Brett. My name's Natasha. I'm taking over from Karen now.
Okay.
You do have a couple more minutes if you want to explain these gorgeous slides.
Okay. Well, people can just, if they can get online and see this, it's up and it's not launched. Bear with me. I'm not satisfied with this work at all. It's slowly elaborating, in effect, in awesome. Yep. And then in that you can explore this. So if you click on this, you can see the categories that I'm dealing with here. If you look at the search sites, you can search. It's got a search functionality that I'm growing, and it goes through that. I've actually mapped or working. I was doing the research a while back on a section of the country on the frontier walls through the Newcastle research. So this has come into this through I think Arnie Lindell's passed, but Bruce Pascal's still around doing it independently. You can see that work being mapped here. And if I come back out of that and reset it to the top here, you can go into various projects that I'm working on to spin it out as it needs to be. And this is Cabringal and a project there.
As you're talking, I might just read out the question in the chat from Philip, who has said the work is stunning, and is it possible to experience the work in virtual reality?
Yes. Fast answer is yes. What I've done is that in each one of the pieces here, I've made it to be screen agnostic. So it doesn't matter what it is, but you can look at it at any type of screen you wish. And so it could sketch to how it wants to be, or be as small as you like on your phone to some extent. That's not the greatest experience. But yes, and when you go into any one of these pieces here, it then leads into playing a short video of what it actually is here. But if I go into the work here, I've also built a digital twin for this particular project. There's 140 digital twins that will be available that you can enter and move around in. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That is incredible. So as I mentioned, I'm Natasha. I'll be taking over for the rest of the afternoon. And Brett, thank you so much for your presentation.